Hello everybody, welcome back. Graham here. Welcome to episode 4 of Living Through Cancer. Now today I'm going to talk about me having my first scan in the NHS to obviously give me a full diagnosis of what I already known to have a high risk of having prostate cancer. So let's just go back and before we have the ultrasound, the scan, I was talking about my feelings of having been told there's a high risk of me having prostate cancer. So one of the things I touched on was about talking through this with my closest family. And who do I tell? What do I tell them? Because I didn't have the full picture of what the diagnosis was, and that was yet to come. But I had already had that understanding of what prostate cancer is and what it can do to you. So I had to put it into steps in my head and understand, where do I take myself through this journey? Because the first thing I did was I got myself clued in to what prostate cancer is. Although I didn't know how aggressive it was or at what level, because you can have level 1, 2, 3 and 4. They call it T1, T2, T3, T4. And all I could do is understand what prostate cancer is and then hope. And what I told myself was plan for the worst and hope for the best. And that's ironically what I've named this episode. And we talked, me and my wife, we said, look, who do you tell? You know, you've now got cancer. We need to understand how this is going to affect our day-to-day lives, because a lot of people don't have the luxury of taking this type of health condition on board and dealing with it without it affecting their everyday lives, their work, their raising of children, excuse me, their social lives, their sex lives, with their nearest and dearest. Just general things change. But one of the greatest things that happened to me once I understood what prostate cancer was is it told me that all the symptoms I had pre-being diagnosed, I was experiencing for a couple of years. And that gave me enormous satisfaction to realize that it wasn't me not being interested or not me being motivated. It was the cancer growing in me and affecting me physically and psychologically. But I thought that was me just becoming a little bit depressed, me withdrawing from any type of social activities, me being less interested in general things, just going out for a walk, going out for a meal, going to the cinema, because I constantly felt, pretty awful. One of the things you have is you have real bad bouts of backache. You can have, your immune system can be compromised. You can get colds. You can get illnesses that you just put down to other things. But it wasn't. It was the cancer growing in me and taking hold. Until the point I came to, I've got to do something and I've got to address this. And I went and had my blood's done, which was the PSA, and that's how I got onto this of understanding there was a high risk of me having cancer through the PSA test. And I look back and I think, oh God, I just couldn't come to the point where I could carry on with my health the way it was without having some understanding of what was happening to me. I mean, crying out loud, I was only 58, 57 when I was diagnosed, and that's, pretty young. And for an adult male, that was young. One of the things I'm eager to tell you is once I was in that system of the hospital, I went for, several scans, quite an intimate process called the biopsy, the MRI, and the scans to understand, the first scan to understand, at what level had the cancer taken hold in my prostate. And all those little journeys have another layer of understanding of what cancer is, or the prostate cancer is, which then add layers of insecurities or vulnerability of how do you proceed forward. And that's all it is. It's working out, how do I bring this in, embrace it, this stamp I've been put on me, to be part of my day, understand it, physically take on board what it's going to do to me, and psychologically what it's going to have an effect on me and the people I love around me. And before in the last episode we were up at the hospital, and I got to the stage where I was having my first scan, and my awareness of my surroundings was non-existent. I knew I was up at the hospital, and I remember going into the changing room and checking in, and there was other people there, and I remember putting on this white gown where you had to tie up the front, and I remember putting on the wrong way round, and I walked out back into the waiting room waiting for my name to be called with this gown pretty much open at the front, and this dear old lady who was lovely turned around and said, "Dear, you've got it on the wrong way around." And I just turned around, walked back, and I felt, like just laughing out loud. And I just put it on the right round and came back out and said, I do apologise. Thank God I had my pants on. But little things like that, you just put into the system, and you just find your way through like a blind person fumbling through the process. And don't get me wrong, the process is fantastic, and there's so much there for you. And I'll tell you more about all this as we go along this journey, but I just want to focus on this little point where I sat and started to talk to this dear old lady who told me she had late stages of cancer in her lungs, and she said, don't worry my love, you're still young and you're going to be okay. And if she hadn't said that to me, I would have still felt so vulnerable going into that first scan, not knowing at what level it was or how much it had taken the prostate, and what are the next stages of the diagnosis. And I just felt compelled to say thank you. And sometimes that is the greatest thing you can say, is thank you to someone who's got a much worse condition and diagnosis and says you're going to be okay. Anyway, I hope you're enjoying these journeys with me and these diaries. You know, we're a long way from where I am now through these diaries, and I'm going to tell you little bits more and how I felt and what I did to cope. And it's great to share with you, and it comes from the heart. So I hope you're enjoying it, and thank you for tuning in. And that's it for today. I'll see you on episode 5 very shortly.